Remember that you want to create two reports that have different titles and footnotes. In your program, you'll specify one set of titles and footnotes for the proc mean step that creates the first report. Then you'll change the titles and footnotes for the proc freak step that creates the second report. Here's the program that we ran in the last demonstration. We've added a proc freak step to create a second report. The title statement in the proc mean step specifies the title, Orion Star Sales Salaries. Here's a question. When you run this program, what title will appear on the proc freak report? The proc freak report will also display the title, Orion Star Sales Salaries. To change a previously defined title or footnote, you add another title or footnote statement that has the same number as the one you want to replace. In this example, the proc freak step now has its own title statement. Redefining a title or footnote also cancels any higher numbered title or footnote lines, respectively. Let's look at a slightly different example. In this program, the proc mean step has a title statement and a title 3 statement. The proc freak step has a title 2 statement. Here's a question. Does the title 3 statement display a title in the proc freak report? The title 3 statement does not display a title in the proc freak report. The title statement displays a title in both reports. However, the title 2 statement in the proc freak step cancels any higher numbered titles, such as the title specified in the title 3 statement. Now, let's see how you cancel titles and footnotes completely. In this example, the footnote statements at the top specify footnotes on lines 1 and 3. These footnotes appear in the proc means report. For the second report, the proc freak report, we want to print only footnote 1 and cancel footnote 3. To cancel a title or footnote on a particular line, you specify a title or footnote statement with the same line number and no text. This also cancels any titles or footnotes on higher numbered lines. In this example, you can add a footnote 3 statement before or inside the proc freak step. Then, a footnote will not appear on line 3 in the proc freak output. To cancel all previously defined titles or footnotes, you can specify a null title or footnote statement, which has no number and no text. It's a good practice to cancel all titles and footnotes at the end of your program so that no unexpected titles and footnotes appear on output that you generate later in your SAS session. In this example, a null title statement and a null footnote statement now appear at the end of the program.
Let's submit this revised program and verify that the correct titles and footnotes appear on each report.
Now, try answering a question about titles and So far, you haven't made any changes to the appearance of variable names in the body of your reports. In the reports that you've created, the variable names appear exactly as they are stored in the input dataset. For example, this ProcFreak report displays the variable name gender, which is stored in the dataset. This basic ProcPrint report also displays the variable names that are displays the variable names that are stored in the dataset. If a dataset stores labels for variables, then many procedures will automatically display the labels in output instead of the variable names. Suppose you want your reports to display descriptive text instead of the variable names. In your ProcFreak report, you want the variable name gender to appear as sales employee gender. And in this ProcPrint report, you want to change all three variable names. To change the appearance of variable names in your reports, you can specify temporary labels by adding the label statement to your proc steps. To review the syntax of the label statement, click Review. In an earlier lesson, you used the label statement in a data step to specify permanent labels for variables. Permanent labels are stored in the dataset. In this example, the label statement specifies labels for the variables job title and hire date. Now, let's add a label statement to a proc step to specify a temporary label for a report. In this ProcFreak step, we'll add a label statement to specify the temporary label sales employee gender for the variable gender. A label statement applies only to the proc step that it's a part of. Let's also specify temporary labels for three variables in this ProcPrint step. The label statement is shown here. Here's a question. Does SAS display labels in both of these reports by default? Most SAS procedures, including ProcFreak, display labels automatically. However, as you learned earlier, ProcPrint does not display labels automatically. ProcFSEdit is another example of a procedure that does not display labels automatically. Here's a question. What option can you add to the ProcPrint statement to specify that labels be displayed? The Label option tells SAS to display labels in ProcPrint output. Another way to tell SAS to display labels is to add the split equals option to the ProcPrint statement instead of the label option. After split equals, you specify a split character, which will indicate where to wrap the label in the report. In this ProcPrint statement, the split equals option now appears. The split character is an asterisk. Next, in the label statement, you add the split character to the label text at the place where you want the label to wrap to the next line. Here, an asterisk appears between the two words of the label annual salary. In the output, these two words will appear on different lines. Without the split equals option, if you're working with a narrow page width or column width, ProcPrint can automatically split labels at special characters, such as blanks or underscores, or at a transition from lowercase to uppercase letters.
Let's run the revised program to add temporary labels to a report. The program containing the two proc steps is in the editor window. Now let's submit the program. First, we look at the proc_freq output. Notice that a new row appears at the top of the frequency table to display the temporary label we specified for gender. Here's a question. Does the original variable name appear anywhere in the report? The original variable name gender still appears in the second row of the table. proc_freq always displays the variable name here. Now let's look at the proc_print output. At the top of the table, notice that the temporary labels now appear instead of the variable names. The label annual salary has split.
Sometimes you want to specify a temporary label for a variable that already has a permanent label stored in the dataset. In this example, a label statement in the data step assigns the permanent label annual bonus to the variable bonus. Then, in the proc_print step, a label statement assigns the temporary label mid-year bonus to the same variable. Here's a question. Which label do you think appears in the proc_print output? The temporary label, the label assigned in the proc_print step, appears in the output. Temporary labels always override permanent labels. Now, let's look at how you can change the appearance of variable values in your reports. By default, your reports display values as they are stored in the input dataset. If no permanent formats are stored with the variables, the values appear without formatting in reports. For example, in this proc print report, the salary amounts and dates are not formatted. This proc freq report also shows dates that are not formatted. When reports show unformatted values, such as currency and date values, they can be difficult to understand. Suppose you want to modify these reports so that the currency amounts and dates are easier to read. Examples of formatted values are shown here. To control how values appear in your reports, you can specify temporary SAS formats by adding the format statement to your proc steps. Like temporary labels, temporary formats apply only to your procedure output. To review the syntax of the format statement, click Review. In an earlier lesson, you used the format statement in a data step to permanently assign formats to variables. In this example, the format statement assigns the $x8 dot format to the variable salary and the DDMMYY10 dot format to the variable hire date. $x8 dot and DDMMYY10 dot are just two examples of formats that SAS provides. Now let's look at the first proc step that we want to work with. Earlier, we added a label statement to this proc print step. Then, we ran the step to create this report. Now, we want to add a format statement that specifies temporary formats for the values of salary, birth date, and hire date. A format statement now appears hire date. A format statement now appears in the proc print step. In our report, we want the salary values to appear with a $, commas, and no decimal places. So we associate the $10.0 format with the salary variable. Here's a question. Do we need to add a separate format statement to specify a format for the date variables? You can specify multiple formats in a single format statement. You can also specify one format for multiple variables. Let's add a format for the two date variables. We want both date values to appear as a 3-character month and a 4-digit year, as shown in this example. In the proc print step, the format statement now specifies the MONYY7 dot format for both birth date and hire date. The format statement is complete. Now, let's add a format to this proc freq step. We want the values of hire date to appear as a 4-digit year. The format statement now assigns the year 4 dot format to hire date. The two revised proc steps are shown here. These SAS procedures apply the specified formats to your output automatically.
Let's run our program to apply temporary formats to currency and date values in a report. Here's the program, which consists of a proc print step and a proc freq step. Let's submit it. First, we'll look at the proc print report. Now that we've applied the $10.0 format to the salary variable, notice that the annual salary values have dollar signs and commas. We've applied the MONYY7 dot format to the birth dates and hire dates, which now appear as a 3-character month and a 4-digit year. Now let's look at the proc freq report.